on am I on tap to speak? Done. Hey guys, is that better?
Yeah, it's fantastic, mate. Fantastic.
Beautiful.
Yeah. There we go.
And he's not just talking about having you on the show. He's prone to nice compliments like that, Matty. So
he's a good-looking guest. He doesn't look like you. Look at that. Pale.
We were just remarking in the way, Matty, that we normally do here. You're obviously going into your winter, aren't you? And we're allegedly going into our summer, and we've just walked outside our homes to find it 0 degrees. So a classic English summer, as you'll say.
Mate, I must confess, I just got back from the surf, and I was surfing in board shorts. So it's although having said that, looks like I might have a bit of rain here today. But yeah, no, it's 24 degrees where I am.
Good. Well, that's what we didn't really want to know about all the sickeningly great things. We've been trying. Everyone's obviously been focusing on what's great about the Aussie market, and we've been trying to get down to the brass tacks and see if there's any skeletons in the cupboard as well. Thank you very much for joining us. It's greatly appreciated. I know it's the end of your day over there, so I take it you're all out of lockdown now, are you? Do you want to just talk us through what's allowed at the moment over there?
Of course, yeah. Well, look, we're coming out of that isolation lockdown restrictions period at the moment, and from Friday, I think we're reopening the Australian pastime pubs. You can go to pubs. I know. How about that? But I don't know how many people are going to take this up. You can only have 10 people in there at any one time, and it's for meals and you can have a drink. So, the thought of some businesses opening for 10 people and putting on staff and all that, I don't know how many people are going to take that up, to be fair. But the reality is we've got to go through that slow process of here's stage one, then if nothing happens, we move to, but it really feels by, maybe the end of June, I'd say we'd be, certainly by July, it almost, like if we're continuing on this path, I think we'll just be back to, nearish normal operations for us. Yeah. Which is good. Yeah. Yeah, it would be. Yeah. So there's a few things to worry about there with our winter and all that kind of stuff, but like our kids are starting to go back into schools, and that's been a godsend for any parent. Like I've got 3 kids, so trying to homeschool them does not work.
Yeah, I've exactly the same. My partner's a school teacher over here, so she's been teaching the key workers children, which has left the hilarious solution that it means I've been home teaching our kids, which they've enjoyed. I don't think it means that any of them will be going to university anytime soon.
No, yeah, mate, that's the same at mine, but I'll tell you, they're becoming pretty good surfers. That's about all we get out.
Hands-on advice. Hands-on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Again, welcome to the show, and it's actually, I think, a huge degree of our audience in the UK. Actually, Matty will know you particularly well. You spoke at the Sunday Times, and it's fair to say we've all been obsessed with the marketing of Cobden and Hayson. Every year, you're very good to me. Normally, when I come out to Arek, the week after, you're exceptionally kind, and you let whatever Poms have come over there to Arek to show them the Cobden and Hayson empire. So it's very well appreciated, and they all come back talking about what an incredible business. Do you want to give us just a bit of a backstory, though, in terms of obviously where you came from in there? I think I believe are you 5 offices now?
5 locations. I guess we're a mid-sized agency for the Sydney market. Yeah.
And have you? I mean, the first phrase I came across coming to Australia was boutique agency, and I think back then when it was Balmain and Drummoyne were your first two, Drummoyne.
Balmain and Annandale. So geographically, really geographically, it's probably similar to your style in the UK, where we're only a few kilometres apart. Really, probably no more than 5 kilometres, really.
Okay. And did you agree with that? The description of boutique agency, and would you still describe yourself as that, or have you become something different?
Yeah, I guess it's just the easiest way to phrase who we are as a boutique company. But yeah, I guess we try to look at things as, we're still very focused on our core market, so within our area. So we don't have grand ambitions to be this broad-based Sydney market being one size fits all for everybody and that type of thing. We're, again, very specific about how we promote and market within each individual areas. So even though we're very close together, so, geographically, Annandale is probably 3 kilometres away from Balmain. Drummoyne's probably only 1 kilometre away from Balmain. But they all have their own little nuances about how, why people go to those particular markets, why they buy, why they sell, why they lease in those markets. So, we've got subtle differences around how we promote and engage and speak to those particular markets. So I guess we are a boutique, but still very much focused on, being core to those demographics within each market.
That's very interesting there. In terms of those different demographics between those markets, what do you think separates them? Is it pricing? Is it age demographic? Because I know sometimes there are certain hotspots, aren't there, that attract, say, people that are retiring, and then there's certain hotspots that attract people that are younger families and so on. So what makes the difference? Because you've geographically, you're very close, aren't you?
Annandale, for example, I would say is a bit more younger, a younger demographic because it's near Sydney University. It's very close again to the CBD. You probably it's probably a 10 to 15% differential in terms of price what you can buy for in Annandale versus Balmain. So it's just that slight degree more affordable for younger people. Having said that, it's still a very much family orientated area, but it's still a bit boutique, hip and happening kind of area. It's a little bit more transient because you are near the university. And that type of thing. So that's that particular market. Whereas Balmain, we're called the inner west of Sydney. So that's our kind of region is the inner west of Sydney. So we're just, I guess if you'd say we're kind of just west of the Harbour Bridge. So Balmain, for example, looks directly east at the Harbour Bridge. So, and that would be considered as almost the pinnacle market of the inner west. So it's probably a little bit more affluent. It's more of an aspirational type of area. Again, very close to the CBD. A lot of people, and if you live in Balmain, you'd probably catch the ferry to go into work. So it's one stop on the ferry into the middle of the CBD. So it's surrounded by water. It's a peninsula suburb. So it's boaties. A lot of wealth with waterfront properties and stuff like that. So it's a little bit different. Then you go across to Drummoyne, which is a lot more heavier with apartments around the waterfront area. And it's probably was more established by, let's say, our European people that came over to, so it became a bit more of, our Italians and our Greek community, established that area. And that's sort of changing demographic, but the houses tend to be on slightly bigger plots of land. And so it's maybe a little bit.
The rest, what you're saying is the restaurants are better in that area, right?
That's exactly right. Indeed.
What would be the price points in those different different markets?
So Balmain, for example, like a prestige pinnacle kind of point would be for us. Look, there are homes worth more than this, but in the last 12 months, the highest price sale was 14 million. So that's, but our average sale price for our company there is ranges it's just around 2.2 to 2.5. That's probably our bread and butter. So and that's risen quite exponentially over the last decade. Whaley's, being in and out of Sydney. Annandale, you're probably a little bit more around the 1.8 mark, something like that, is your mid-range. Drummoyne again's got significant homes. It's they range in excess of 10 million as well. But your average price there's it's two very different markets. So you've got quite a strong apartment market, which is still around 1.5 million, but the houses are probably around 2.5.
And would you still describe yourself as being in the middle to top end of the marketplace, or?
Indeed, yeah. So in 2019, our company are you talking about just the company results and things like that?
Yeah. I'm talking about where you position yourself to your clients. It's very difficult. Clearly, you're not in the volume end of the market. But I don't think it's fair to say you're doing the. Are you doing the Uber Prime stuff? I know you sell some transit. Where do you position yourself? Because of course, positioning is all important, isn't it? You can't really try to be all things to all people.
Correct. Yeah. No. Look, there's no doubt that we dominate that top end of the market. Certainly in Balmain, where we've got just over 60% market share for anything over $3.5 million. So that's probably just happened naturally as part marketing, but part the people that we've got in the company. They've been there a long time, and that clientele tends to gravitate to our agents. And the same in Drummoyne. We're So we're the number one agency in Balmain. We're the number one agency in Drummoyne. We're probably second in Annandale, but that's a much broader kind of geographic area. So, but yeah, across all of our offices, and of course, I haven't even mentioned we've got one in Marrickville. We've just opened one in Lane Cove, which is our a foray into the North Shore of Sydney. But yeah, we've always had a very strong track record at the top end of the market, the prestige side. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll come back to the marketing in a minute, because I think, of course, that's an area you just absolutely excel in. Do you mind just giving us a bit of the backstory about how you kind of started up? What was your path into agency?
Sure. Yeah, of course, mate. Yep. So look, Matty Hayson, our brand as it stands today, started in September 2005. But prior to that, the company had actually been in the area for over 20 years. Like, I've been there for 23 years now. I think when I started, on 96, I don't know whatever my maths is. And we were a franchise model then, So there was Ray and Horn was a large franchise model here. It's probably one of the ones that's been deteriorating over the last 15 years or so. And we just made the decision that we couldn't attract the right type of staff. We didn't feel as though we were engaging with our community, just with that that common stage brand and the colours. And we were always at loggerheads with them. So and that was back in the early 2000s. And we just decided, look, we had a competitor that was there in our marketplace that was already running what we call that boutique, that was engaged in the community. They had a bit more of a vibrant brand about to them, and a bit more cutting edge. And we just said, look, we're held back by the brand because we were just bland across the board. So we just went, right, that's enough of that. Let's come in there with our own energy, our own ideas, our own look and feel and everything like that. And immediately, as soon as we started to do that, obviously we engaged a really good, a company that worked with us to really understand who we are as myself and my business partner director, who we were. We had some funny chats about that. With the marketing people, they talk a language that I don't understand. There was like, you guys VB or you champagne, what are? Anyway, so all that kind of, that stuff that you go through with marketers. But ultimately, it was more of our ideas and strategies that we really wanted to push into the market. Like, we were early adopters of abolishing print marketing for property, which was huge in Sydney. If we go back to those, those early stages in the 2000 area where we just made the decision to drop print altogether and go digital. Yeah. And so some things like that we started to really develop, and that gave us some good, significant cut through to launch the brand. And then just bringing on good people. And as most people know, if you're running a good company, it's largely around the quality of the people that are coming into your business and building them, nurturing them, and, getting some good support around them.
And how has that grown over the years? So you're 5 offices. How many people are in the business? How many? It's Danny, your partner, isn't it? Is that right? Is it?
Yeah, Danny. Yeah, yep.
And he looks after the property management side of the business largely. Is that right?
No, not at all. So, so we've got, so we both probably have a foot in all the camps in the company, but I would say Danny probably takes a little bit more lead role in the PM side of things. But he's still very much out there actively selling like I am, so we've never given that up.
What that probably came from was whenever I tried to missell you repits, you always told me to speak to Danny, so it was probably just you getting rid of me.
Every company needs a Danny, that's the truth. When it comes to people like you.
Yeah, it's good cop, bad cop, mate.
Yeah. So how many? So on an average, in an average year, how many would you sell? How many properties do you manage?
Yeah, so we manage just under 4,000 at the moment. So that's grown significantly, and we can touch on that later. I mean, we've just bought 2 particular companies in the last 6 months. Great timing, COVID. Thank you very much. But we saw some opportunities there. So we've just got under 4,000 in management, and we do about 750 transactions in terms of sales per annum. Yeah.
So in terms of that, just going back to property management again, how many people does it take to manage 4,000 properties?
Takes a lot. So that's all broken up in individual offices. So, for example, like in Balmain, we've got 1,600. In Annandale, there might be 1,400. In Drummoyne, there's 450. So normally our average property manager is looking after about 180 in their portfolio, and then they might have a person kind of just backing them up in terms of what I'm not sure exactly your terminology, whether or not it's your lettings people or whatever, but there's somebody out there consistently showing properties, all the time, and then helping that senior property manager that's overseeing everything.
Can I hear a bird?
Yes, you probably can.
Just to clarify, David, you're talking about the flying kind, aren't you? Yeah, you're not.
Yeah, well, I'm presuming he hasn't got somebody tied up in his wardrobe behind him or something.
This is why this is why we go to Australia. They're all of their creatures are fantastic, aren't they? So we were talking to Phil Harris yesterday. He said to send his regards. And one of the things we were talking about there was the dynamic of, obviously, you want to encourage, and he perceived that actually personal brands were, the scale was changing between the brand of the company and the brand of the individual, with obviously the brand of the individual becoming ever stronger. And yes, whilst that is difficult to manage, it's something you should encourage, because frankly, that's what a lot of people want. Is that a challenge you recognise, and do you agree with him that the personal brand is ever more important?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's funny you should say that. I was just listening to a podcast with your mate Eddie Jones, your coach of England, and he was saying that what he's seen in it's quite relevant actually. I was just listening to him this morning on an Australian podcast, and he said, "Look, what I've seen in terms of coaching over the last 30 years is when I first started, I could go in and just get the team around and go, right, this is the way we're doing it, and we're going to go hell for leather, and all of you are going to follow me, and we're going to win." But he said, now managing players, it's far more around, evolving the individual, working one-on-one with them, creating them, letting them thrive, letting them feel like they've got a bit of a voice at the overall table, but under the umbrella of this bigger structure to say, look, here's who we are and where we want to go. But look, we love that you bring this individuality to the process, and look, we want that to flourish. But under the umbrella of, we don't go outside of these particular rules. And I think that's how we're operating our business now, is encouraging the agents to, bring their personality. I've always loved it, and we've always been one of the things, way back before it was just about the company. We've always wanted to see the individual agent, because that's who people engage with, the personalities and, some authenticity, because we just didn't want to create robotic, trained manual type agents that are just, there to kind of tick boxes. They've heard the scripts and dialogues and they just want to deploy that. We want somebody to think on their own feet and actually deliver something that's of value and tangible to the client.
And one of your chaps, I saw Peter, was it Peter, just got top 100 again the other day. So clearly that must be very satisfying to you to see that these guys get the national recognition and can do that underneath a brand like yourself.
Look, to be honest, Whaley, I've got plenty of agents that are in the top 100. Some of them choose to go in it, others couldn't be bothered. Pete sees it as an advantage because he's just opened an office in Plain Cove, so it's good for him. That's some branding for him. I've got other agents that are as successful, but they just that kind of stuff. They're just I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing behind the scenes.
Are you saying what Peter's like? He's a bit of an award winner like me. He wants the attention.
No. Free booze at every event. No.
Yeah, that's
I just think it's yeah. Go, mate.
I'm definitely going to try and do that event next year if this social distancing allows. Anyway, I should have known. Obviously, you've got more team members there, but as you'll appreciate, I only ever do the slightest bit of research. So,
you're not alone in that area.
So in terms of Simon touched on it earlier, and I think obviously you referred that you were very quick to adopt digital marketing, probably much earlier than most of your competitors in that area. So I would imagine, being the first one into a digital space, it was quite lonely. You had a lot of room there at the time, but obviously now that's quite crowded, isn't it, in terms of everybody clamoring for the same attention. So just talk to us about how sort of digital marketing's changed and what makes your marketing different to that of your competitors.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it is. It's a pretty crowded space now, isn't it? As everybody's caught up, and there's not a lot of, there's probably too much opportunity in space now to kind of get cut through, and really, it's very difficult now when we're sitting in front of a client to show real value and where we differentiate from our customer, other competitors. So what we really focus on now is, and Whaley would know about this because we've been doing it for a very long time, is we're very focused on using our own internal database as an off-market platform So when we list a property, first and foremost, I can almost say at least with 90% of our homes, they go directly to our core group of registered buyers, and we would be engaging with them first. So, and we spend a fair bit on, we've got internal marketing, so photographers, floor plans, our 3D walkthrough tours now, which have probably ramped up a little bit as a result of the restrictions. They're not just your 3D tours. We've actually got the agent doing some video within that. So you can, as you go through it, actually, it feels like an open home where you can click on a button, the agent pops up, starts to explain about the kitchen, can walk them through, look over the back fence and some of those things that you might not be able to see on an ordinary 3D plan. So it's some of those things that we're just trying to refine always with digital marketing, just to give us small parts of advantage. I mean, you're not seeing big wins now because, everybody knows what's going on and most people are pretty sophisticated, but we just look for little minor wins. So whether or not it's just the way that we're shooting the imagery, whether or not it's day and dusk photography, whether or not it's something we can upgrade with the floor plan, whether or not it's something that we can upgrade with our 3D tour or our video. It's just those kind of things that we kind of treat courses for each property.
And do you guys, you're occupying that upper end of the market. We, in the UK, we tend to be sort of more understated, mainly because getting a drone up on top of an average British house isn't going to make it look like it's sun-kissed by the coast with a sunseeker sort of rushing into it. So obviously we don't get the glamour and we don't get the glitz, to be honest with you. So we don't get that opportunity to do that. But in the States and certainly in Australia, you see some of these fantastic productions in terms of the videos that people are releasing for marketing much bigger, higher end properties. Is that something that you guys get involved with?
Oh, look, sure, yeah. We've got our internal guy will do drone and video, whatever we need. But you've got to remember, and Whaley would know this, like Balmain, it's full of ponds, right? So we got Brits coming out of our ears in Balmain. So, and it's very much like a town in England. Our homes are on 150 square meters of land, so they're not big. Yeah. They're side-by-side terraces. There's a real mixture of architecture. So in many of the times, we have to get creative because we're dealing with, we're dealing with 5 metre wide homes that are, aren't that deep, and they've, got awkward floor plans in many cases. So we have to really work hard to make that look creatively inspiring to get people through. So, and I think this is probably one of the big differences that you'll see between Australian agency and UK agency is, our clients here in Australia are not afraid of spending $20,000 or $30,000 to get their house ready for sale. Like that would all.
Why does?
Sorry, Whaley.
Sorry, just to interrupt there, because it's a really key point. Is why do you think you've been over here, and we'll come on to that a little bit later. But just on that point, why do you think the Brits? Are we literally just too sprinkling, or is it because we don't have the kind of the data to back up what spending that sort of money will deliver? I think you do a really good job of explaining VPA, don't you? Whereas we just don't. I don't think we believe it, if we're honest.
Yeah, sure. So look, the evidence is irrefutable once you start getting into the system. And I've spoken to a number of the UK guys that are trialing the Australian model, and they're having fantastic success from what I can see. So the thing within Australia, it did take some time, So if I go back 10 years or 15 years. The thought of a client spending $6,000 to remove all of their furniture out of the house and stage it professionally was just not going to happen. But little by little, as it became more and you started to see case studies and evidence growing that house looks so much better online because it's got fantastic styling. And as we touched on, I've got small houses with small spaces, and we've got furniture befitting of those rather than, the couch that's been handed down and passed around the family 5 times. So we started to build evidence, and then over time you could start to see the results start to build, and the price differential, the days on market dropped down significantly, the price that they were achieving increased, and the stress of it all was just removed. And I think ultimately that's what any seller wants is, can you get me the highest price in the shortest time frame and remove stress? Yeah. So when you can kind of sit with a client and talk about those 3 things with a high degree of confidence, then it's pretty hard for a client to say, I'm not going to do that.
Do you still focus very heavily? One of the things and it's bizarre that we never, there's a couple of things that are bizarre. Obviously, your good friend and mentor, Josh, came over here and told us that we should be prospecting, and we all sort of said, Oh, that's a good idea. And also, then he started focusing on, look, here's what's, whisper it quietly, here's what some of the Aussie agents are doing. They're actually focusing on days on the market, i.e. how quickly they can sell it. And it was like everyone went, he's the chosen one. I'm a big Life of Brian fan. So yeah, he's but you know, that is that still, I know that you used to have all your sort of brochures have very heavily focused on that days of the market for each of the Is that still an area that you focus on and still major?
Yes, yeah. So it's critical for us. Look, we're constantly, so we monitor this data and this gets pushed out to our clientele. So if you're within our inner circle, for example, you know, it's almost like banking. If you're a private client, so to speak, and you're on the system, whether or not you're looking to sell, lease, whether or not you're a passive observer of the market, you'll be getting every week from us an overview of, you know, what we've sold, how long, when it was on the market, even things like we go to what we appraised it for versus what it sold for. So you can see the price, the differential. So we've always been very clear on, you know, again, we've done this for all since we launched our brand, is the differential of what we advise a client versus what we sell. And we're always plus minus 2%. Yeah. So as long as, so it's pretty powerful to go to a client and say, listen, if you follow this process with us, we can tell you that where we're going to get on the price, plus thousands, that's how accurate we are. So it's all of that trading days on market and all of that kind of stuff, that evidence is very powerful.
That's really interesting. And I guess because you're doing that central digital launch first and going to that inner circle, as you said, that gives you a head start, doesn't it, as well, with the campaign, which means it's going to be on the market by definition less time.
Absolutely. So you can refine everything. So if you're going straight to your database of clients, and that's what every vendor says to us, they say, oh, look, we know you've just sold the last 15 houses. Who missed out on those? And we go, great, well, let's talk to all of them. Let's get them through. We can get some really solid feedback on what they're thinking on price, whether or not there's areas of resistance. Is there anything that we should be able to, you know, manipulate before or change or adjust before we go out to the broader market, so that we know that when we launch to that open campaign, we've got this really solid evidence, not from an agent and a vendor with, you know, kind of their own views on value. We've actually got it from realistic, ready to act, ready to perform buyers. So we go into the market right at setting the right platform.
So I think your average days on the market, Matty, is about it's 26 days, isn't it? Or at least that was on your website.
It's 26 days. So we dropped it down. So when the market's heated, it goes down to about 18. But then across the board, yeah. So even through this, you know, restricted COVID period, we were still just under 30 days on the market, and that's where we couldn't. You know, we're doing one-on-one appointments. You know, who wanted to buy a house in the last 6 weeks? I mean, but we were managing to do that in a relatively, you know, reasonable time frame.
Simon, that is the difference between Australia and the UK. You know, 26 days to sell a house is just, it's phenomenal, isn't it? I think it would be a dream here.
I think you know Mark Manning very well, David. I think he actually did. Mark was at when Matty spoke at the Sunday Times, and he said, "How can you compare when they're selling it in days and we're selling it in seasons?"
Yeah.
So, if without having to kill me, could you give us a clue as to what the size of database that inner circle is?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's obviously varies. So just across the board, we've got about 26,000. But then that's obviously segmented down into different portions, you know, whether or not they're buying or where they are in the cycle. So been working pretty closely with Josh Fegan, who incidentally, Whaley, I've actually got his house quietly listed on our database for sale at the moment, just today. So very interesting. Very interesting time.
You must be pleased about that. You know why he sold that? It's because I went there last time, so he can't look at the house the same way now.
Yeah, well,
I take it you use the toilet there, and that's it now. It's a no-go zone, right?
Yeah, devalued big time.
I won't ask you the price. I'll go on your website and see if I can find it. Not that I can afford it anyway.
No, well, you can imagine how easy a client would be.
I just want to go back to the affordability, because obviously we're very familiar here in the UK with what it takes to buy a house and the mortgage process and what people are putting down as a down payment there. And I'm not even sure of the conversion rate. Simon, maybe you can remind me how many Aussie dollars there are to the pound today?
I think it's at 2/3. Is it about 2/3? And then you talk, and I'll find out on XE.
Okay, you find out. But basically, my question is this: obviously your prices are in the millions. So, what does it take the average Joe to buy a house there? Is that purely sort of an exclusive market? Do they have to have 30% down? Is it 20%? What are the banks doing there? What's the average lending rate?
So we've just come out of a heated market. So it's been very choppy, the Sydney market. So we had a peak in 2017 and then a downturn in part of 18 and through mid 19, and then it really accelerated. So for example, our market in 2019 from October to December jumped 13%. My local market. And then probably went up another 4 or 5% up to about February before all of this, COVID kicked off. Look, our market is slightly exclusive to a degree, but it's, you're talking about 10 kilometres within the CBD of Sydney. There's not much, $1 million isn't getting you much, it's $2 million. You're starting to get something, decent, and there's pockets, that you can add value, but, the banks, while the market was heated, we're probably doing a 10% down payment. So they'd lend the 90%. And depending on the quality of the client, if you had just been buying your first home or something like that, they might be a little bit tougher. And or if you had a bit of a questionable, financial history, they might ask for 20%. But they APRA, who's our regulator for loans and stuff like that, they were pretty tough on our market, which was one of the key reasons for the downturn through 2016 and 20. They really reined in the criteria, and they made it very tough. And then they realised that they'd actually made it too tough. So then all of a sudden they loosened it all up, and it's amazing, that liquidity and access to funds, how much of that pours into property here in Australia. It's just incredible, the obsession with property. And even now, I mean, to date, touch wood, I'm sure there's worse to come, but I would say, I'm not sure what the UK version is, but our market is probably adjusted just by around 5% through the last 2 months of COVID.
It's too soon for us to say. I think that wouldn't be a far, an unfair estimate, really. As ever, it's a local market, isn't it? So I'm always very, very wary of calling it across the. I think it's really difficult to know, Matty, because obviously there is going to, and what we're seeing is there's a massive demand now with those absolutely motivated buyers and vendors. So it's how long that persists, doesn't it? And then what happens after that initial surge that I think will define prices. So that's going to be really interesting. Yes. Can I just touch on that point there? Because obviously you're quite right. I've been lucky enough to come over and see. I mean, it's been great actually seeing how your business has just gone from strength to strength. And the Sydney market as well has mimicked that, and to the degree that it's become almost too successful. During the GFC, you guys really didn't. I know you suffered, but you didn't suffer like the rest of the world. A large element of that was Chinese and Asian investment. And actually what happened was, from what I could see to speaking to people, that actually got a bit too, the figures became too much. And am I right in thinking, didn't you put some sort of limits on investment from Chinese buyers? Or was it just we did. National buyers?
No, absolutely, yeah. So Chinese buyers, their stamp duty doubled, and then they had to go through the Foreign Investment Review Board, and I think even through more recently, the government here have come out through COVID and said, right, if you're a Chinese, like everything needs to go through Foreign Investment Review Board because they're worried about the Chinese coming in and buying all our depressed assets and agricultural land and stuff like that, because there's a big chain now of things coming out where the Chinese have bought lots of our agriculture, and they're even buying ports and stuff like that just to basically take up all their stuff and ship it off and get it back to China. So, but yeah, they did, certainly from a property side of things, they lifted stamp duty. It became quite a bit different because you could buy if you invested $5 million into a property here in Australia, you immediately got residency. So a lot of Chinese were just going bang, bang, buy that. I've got an Australian residency now. And they're just leaving those properties vacant. So, and I think China also cracked down on money coming out of China and going into these, countries like ours too. So it slowed that down considerably. But we're hearing again now that there's more Chinese money just in the last month starting to flow back into Australia for property.
the irony of the fact that this virus started in China, and yet that's is where most of the asset buying is happening. Is I'm not going to put this tinfoil hat on and get all conspiracy theory, but there's a really interesting dynamic, because I think it's interesting to hear you say that. I spotted that a couple of your airlines were struggling, and again the Chinese have come in and scooped those up, haven't they? Which is what do they call it, David? You're far more learned than me. They call it their Silk Road strategy, don't they? The Chinese, which is owning all of the essentially the assets, and which is what they're doing. I mean, they're doing it primarily in obviously in Africa, but obviously you're on their doorstep, so they're going to see you as.
I love how this podcast has just veered off into that. That murky space where we start to talk about conspiracy theories.
I held back for half an hour. Come on, cut me some slack.
They call it the Chinese virus. It's from China.
China.
Let's deal with 5G now.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So that, I mean, it's still, and it's hard to see. Like London, Tokyo, Sydney's always going to have that magical aura about it, isn't it? In terms of a marketplace.
Look, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And I think I've only been saying this to our clients recently. Is even the way that we've just somehow dodged a bullet with this COVID. Being this huge island, we can just close the borders, and all of a sudden you kind of feel pretty safe here as well. So for me, it only just reinforces that we're in a pretty lucky place. I mean, largely our lifestyle, from this didn't change much at all. Okay, restaurants and pubs closed, but everyone was still just getting on with life, and really the impact didn't feel anywhere near as severe as maybe what you guys have felt over there.
No, that's right. This is where the show turns serious, if you can believe that, Matty, and I'm going to hit you with the hard questions. I've got a bit of a bone to pick with you. I was going through many of your Market Pulse videos yesterday, and obviously looking at how well they, the detail you're in there. You talk about a lot of those stats we've been talking about. But the bone I've got to pick with you is, have you ever worn the same outfit twice in any of those Property Pulse videos? Because
that's funny. It's funny you should say that, mate. I actually got a guy that emails me every week going, blue shirt again, blue shirt again, blue shirt again. And I respond to him going, oh, mate, this one's got a check. Oh, this one's got that. And he goes, still blue. So
you're that famous, you've got your own stalker. That's
I've actually got another one that's a bit more creepy than that. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll take that one offline for the when I come over there.
Yeah. I have the same. My mother texts me after every video, every podcast. She texts me. The text for the last 3 days has been, so when are you going to shave? Why are you not shaving? What's happening?
Yeah, I know.
Today, silky smooth, Mum.
Looking very fresh.
Those pulses are a really key element, aren't they? I mean, they really, first of all, they deliver. If I'm fascinated by them, and I'm all the way over here in Manchester, in England, I can just see the power they would have for somebody in a local market. I'm guessing that the amount of times they've been downloaded and viewed has just exponentially rocketed during this whole lockdown process.
Yeah, sure. So I put that across a number of platforms. So it goes out through our weekly update to our, so again, those kind of private clients, so it goes out to our whole database. So it's pretty heavily viewed there. And then across social media and Instagram and YouTube and stuff. So LinkedIn is pretty big too. So it does work. And to be honest, it keeps me kind of fresh around like what's going on. And I try to take a balanced approach to it all. Like at the moment, we've got two divided camps here in Australia. You've got the bears that are saying that it's going to drop 20 or 30%. It just has to, because economic unemployment, hits double digits, and businesses aren't going to recover for a long time, and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got probably potentially the more bullish type of people that are saying, listen, if this adjusts more than 5%, that'll be down. That'll be the end of it. Then it'll just rebound while interest rates remain at these record low levels. So. I try to dissect a bit of all of that and just let people know what we're seeing at the coalface of our market, like what we're hearing, seeing, how buyers are transacting. So, and just keeps me a little bit, keeps me a bit sharp about, how to explain things.
Right.
When you look at your local market and you talk about competition, typically speaking, let's just talk about your particular office, your market where you serve. how many main competitors have you got there, and what's the relationship like between you guys? Is it fiercely sort of competitive? Is it bitter, or is it collaboration?
Look, absolutely, it's fierce, and I wouldn't say it's particularly friendly either, to be honest, because it's a cut. It's cutthroat.
Attaboy,
It's a cutthroat. Mate, I won't hold back. To be honest, I don't really like any of them, and I don't talk. I don't associate with them. I don't talk to them. You know, like I might have a wave or something. But our market's so. I'll tell you our market. And this is the thing which I haven't enjoyed about what agents do in our area. And this gives you an example of how cutthroat it is. So you guys don't auction a property, but so we auction a property on a Saturday. You've got neighbours there. You know, before the so back in the good old days, you might have 50, 60 neighbours. Or onlookers, people that have seen this particular property over the course of the campaign, and they're there to watch. You might have 5 or 6 bidders, right? So that bidding will go, and the hammer will fall. The lucky buyer gets the property, and everybody's great. Every single one of those auctions, we would have between 6 to 12 or 15 of our competitor agents there watching the auction, secretly photographing who's bidding, so that they can then send it out to their other agents in their office. Oh, it's this guy bidding, it's that lady bidding. And then even to the extent of, and this happened to us recently, the hammer falls, these other agents that had nothing to do with the sale whatsoever then start door knocking our street, advising the neighbours, hey, you might have seen down the road, this property just sold at auction this morning. And they had the audacity to say, if we had had it, we would have got a better outcome. So,
yeah, okay.
So
I'm starting to see. Yeah.
So you're telling me it's quite friendly then, eh?
Yeah. My AirPods, just 1 sec. I'm just going to swap over to a cord here. Just a sec, guys.
Yep. That's a really...
Got me?
Yeah, you got...
Yeah.
Yeah, the old AirPods were dying.
That's fascinating. That's an aspect we haven't really caught up with anyone yet. You know, it's to date, you know, most people have been, they haven't particularly liked it. But I suppose that's what a razor-sharp neighbourhood and the property prices and obviously that level of competition just means is almost inevitable, isn't it?
Mate, it is, and it feels at times where, like, politicians, you know, like, you know, they'll throw so much dirt. They'll you know, like, even if you're sitting in a listing appointment or whatever, that your client will say, oh, I saw X down the road, and they said, oh, I wouldn't go with them. I wouldn't use Matt. Apparently, he doesn't even really do open homes and things like this anymore. You know, so it's just all that kind of, you know, gamesmanship that, you know, we just stay out of it and try to.
So that point about they are filming the underbidders essentially, knowing that they've missed out on this property, so they know they can proceed, so they're going to hit those and say, we've got these ones that are just right for you.
Yes,
that's incredible. That's taking it up a notch, isn't it? The arms race.
But you know what? That gives me the reason I asked this is because at the moment we've just been sent back to work literally. In the last 24 hours, the biggest news to hit the UK and also the UK property market is that the housing minister has reopened the property market and sending all UK agents back to work after COVID lockdown. So, but there are rules as to what we can do and what we can't do and how we can show a house and how we can't. So we can't do any open homes anymore. We need to do everything by appointment only and social distancing and all this sort of stuff. So it's much more strict over here. And for most of us, what we've done is the public are as confused as we are. Yeah. So, you know, at the moment you're looking at a public that can't see their mum or their dad, but they can have strangers come into their house to view it. So,
yes. Yeah, so I know. Well, I get it.
It's bizarre, but it's been an opportunity for us to communicate with our clients. So yesterday I did a video and I said, look, you know, guys, this is what we've been told. It's new to us as well. This is what we're going to be doing to keep you safe. This is it. And, you know, it's great. The public received it very well, but my competitors seized on that and pulled it apart. And they start to look at, well, he's advising you to do this and he's advising you to do that. And so over here, the rivalry, I think, Simon, the answer is that this world of agency, for some reason, it attracts the best like me and Matt. Yeah. And then the rest of the cunts, who just completely fight with. But it can be very, very aggressive. Very aggressive.
Totally. It's yep.
Matt, because you do so much of this as confidential marketing, does that mean that you do far more private treaty than your competitors as well, or do you still encourage them to go to auction? So what percentage is it between private treaty and auction?
Okay, so in a heated market, we would still be doing 85, 90% of our properties would be auction. Only 10% would be private treaty. Having said that, in a cooler market, but then we've got off market. So off market to us means it never hits the portals, never goes outside of that. It's just kept inclusive. So we would sell 25 to 30% of our properties per annum just through that way, just through, it's just a puzzle, right? We know who the buyer is. We know that vendor wants to move for these particular reasons. And we just put it together. But if we are going to go out to the broader market, it would be 90% would be auction. Even now, we're advising our clients right now in this environment to still go to auction. And the reason why we're making that recommendation is that we don't need any further reasons for a buyer to sit on their hands and ponder over decisions. So if we've got an auction, at least we can bring this to a conclusion. In a controlled time frame. So if anything, even in a downturn market, it almost makes even more sense. But otherwise, buyers just don't do anything.
And what to you makes a great auctioneer?
An auctioneer?
Yeah.
Oh,
the only over here in the UK, the only auctions that we get to see from over there is mostly Tom Panos posts his fantastic street theatre, and he's obviously very loud and very. But not all of you are the same, right?
No, very, very much. So Tom's a very good, experienced auctioneer as well. I use Damien Cooley, who in my view is, right up there with the best I've seen. And he look, his key ability is to read the crowd. Like he's a master at body language, just the tuck of the shirt between a partner when the bidding's going on, where he'll pull you aside and go, mate, they've definitely got more money in them, go and have a chat to them. But just running the pace of everything like that as well and catching people off guard. And even as simple as, and I've seen him, do it time and time again where, for me, the true test of a really strong auctioneer is when there's only one buyer. And Damien Cooley runs an auction better than anybody that makes it look like there's so much happening when there's only one registered bidder, that other bidder has no concept whatsoever that there aren't other people there bidding on this property. And I'm not saying he does anything untoward. It's just the language and the dialogue and the theatrics would make it feel like this is exciting. This is good to watch.
I had to go and have a pint after watching one of your auctions, Matty, because, it absolutely... I think I prefer to see that than a film at the movies. Look, there's two elements to it. Yes, there's street theatre, but look, that wouldn't work if you still weren't doing the very best for your vendor at the end of the day, was it? So I believe there's nothing left on the table with that auction process that you guys do. And I think there's an interesting dynamic there, David. One thing you mentioned there, was it Damien? That's a specialist, separate firm of auctioneers, isn't it? Is it right? Any agent can call on to run an auction.
Yes.
So that would
yes.
That would be like David I Am Sold or SDL, doing it here, but they're doing it still at the property. And
the seller of the property, do you find that they always want to watch and be present, or is it something they'd rather not look at?
No, look, it is nervous. They definitely want to be able to hear. They might not want to actually watch. So we'd always put them in a room or something where they can, because they want to hear where the bidding's up to, and then we might have a conversation with them and they can hear when it gets a sense of when it's slowing down, if the bidding's a little bit lower than they thought or whatever it might be. I mean, you don't really need to talk to them. If it's flying and it goes past reserve, the next time you talk to them is when you're opening champagne bottle, right? So, but they'll stay within earshot, most of them.
But there's that dynamic, isn't there? What do you call it? Is it going inside where the bidding hasn't quite it hasn't been that buoyant, so they go back in to have a conversation with the vendors and get an update from them, and again that's another level of sort of the theatre as well, but necessary to find out, to give the feedback to the crowd, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And this is probably a key thing for the UK viewers and everything, is that, look, a lot of times, as you would know, when you go and sell a property, the vendor's expectations are wildly outrageous. They're off the mark. And so an auction will bring that and bring it to a conclusion where they can actually see live, this is where your market value is. So a lot of the times, we find with vendors, they need a bit of hard love to bring them into line and get them on and move them forward with life. Otherwise, they'll just sit there forever and just go, oh, we never got what we wanted, and we'll try again in another year, or just leave it sitting there on the market. Like as Australian agents, that's just not an option for us. If we're going to go into this and we're going to work for free and do what we do, you're selling, unless it's, unless we've really stuffed it up.
I always thought that the auction process was something that by the end of it, you knew what the value of your property was, because it couldn't be disputed, because you've had to thresh it out there with members of the public, and the market speaks, and the vendors have to sit up and realize, here in the UK, where we don't get involved in auctions as much, then the process is very speculative. We wait for those buyers on a one-by-one basis, and so the vendor can take the point of view that, hang on, I've not yet found the guy that's going to give me $1 million. Maybe I need to wait another 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Whereas you guys get all your marketing done, you round up everybody, and really, if you don't get the price that you're looking to get in front of the house that day, it feels like you've tested it fully.
Absolutely. Well, that's the key thing about it all. And I guess it comes back to that original strategy. It's like, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's make sure that we cover all the bases, touch all the points where we know there's active buyers looking. And it's a well-beaten path with our portals here and the process and everything, that if you're not getting what you want, we've done everything we can to show you and demonstrate in live real time where it's sitting.
But does that mean then that, right, I mean, I know the whole month essentially, from listing the open homes, it's all about staging and setting the vendor's expectation. But do you have to then have almost a pre-auction chat with the vendors and say, look, this is, we were hoping to get around here, but what we've been seeing is we expect the bidding to hit, so that it's not all a big surprise to them. I guess that has to be a fairly stark conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, Whaley. Yeah, so look, I'll just give you the lowdown on it, right? So we are heavily involved with our clients through the course of the auction campaign. So they would be getting daily communication. All of our clients, like, this is how my team operates. They all go on a WhatsApp group. So I've got there's me and 2 other people in my immediate team. As soon as their property goes on the market, that our conversation with these clients increases to there would be probably 15 to 20 pieces of communication a day through WhatsApp every week. And then that's every inspection. We let them know who the buyer is, how long they've been looking, what their budget is, have they bid on anything else, why we think they're a genuine buyer versus other buyers where they might come in and say, look, they'll lowball you because they lowball everything. So we're starting to build this overall picture for the client, and we give that and back that up with feedback every week with this very detailed, this is how many web hits we've had, this is how many buyer inspections we've had, this is how many contracts have been issued, this is how many offers we've had. Here's a range of all of the buyers, here's their budget, and here's where their price feedback is on your particular property. Here's our recommendations, and then moving forward, towards the auction, this is where we feel pricing is going to be sitting. So that starts right from day one. So by week 4, as you rightly say, there are absolutely no surprises. And that's the thing, the conversation we have with the client, where we say, look, the only surprise that we're going to have on the day is whether or not bidder A or bidder B bids more than we're anticipating.
Yeah. Do weaker agents, do they not have that start conversation? Do they just hope?
No, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Hopeless. Yep. And that's probably what separates, and the same in the UK, what separates the really good agents with the poor ones is the people who can read the play. They can see what's coming at them. They know what's going on. They can even read between the lines, and a buyer's saying, look, they're not going to pay more than this, but you really know they're meaning another thing. That's what separates the good agents from the weak ones.
Making what on the face of it is quite a mysterious process appear transparent, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
And that's what any skilled professional will do to, the muggles and the great public out there that are obviously on board. Matty, one of the things we've been asking people is you've been over here. In fact, let's touch on that point now. You've been over here and you've been around many great businesses here. What's your perception? Are there any businesses over here that stand out for you, or elements of what we do you think because we're always looking for throw us a freaking bone here, what do we do well?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Tell us what about our fantastic cuisine and weather you love over here.
Yeah, I don't know about the weather, but what I can tell you is, look, what we've always admired with the UK is all the ancillary stuff that you have. So you've got whether or not it's conveyancing and your connection services, and you've got all of these extra conduits for where income's coming through and valuations and all of this type of stuff. So we've always looked at that and gone, wow, they're so much better at actually clipping the ticket on so many more things through the property transaction. We're not that good. We're starting to evolve into that space now, but it's not really the consumer. So your consumers are down that path. They're very much aware that you go to you guys as your UK industry and you get all of these services. In Australia, you basically go for leasing, for sale, and that's kind of it. It's very unusual for us to get any other additional funds. Really, it's unusual, but we're starting to build on that. So I can absolutely say the UK do that better than us. There's no doubt about that. And then, look, there are some companies over there. I've seen some amazing marketing that some of the UK brands do as well, which, look, we might have ripped off a bit of a Foxton's tagline somewhere once or twice in our lifetime. So, I mean, there's some fantastic marketing over there as well. So it's not all bad, but the one thing I do find very unusual, which I've spoken to UK agents about, which I find it really unusual that you send somebody out to do the pricing, and goes out and meets a client and says, "Oh, your house is worth this," and then they disappear and never talk to that client again. And somebody else comes in and tries to build a relationship that had nothing to do with the pricing. I find that quite unusual.
Yeah, there you are, David. Defend your industry.
I've got to tell you, we are one of the few exceptions with that. Unfortunately, once I go out and see you, I'll end up taking your photographs. I'll probably end up showing your buyers, and you'll end up chasing me at some point. So I think there are businesses that have that continuity, but it's much more segregated over here. And I think the key to that is that we're not that good at breeding sort of all-rounders that do a little bit of everything. And instead, we sort of train people to, you're going to be a negotiator, or you're going to be a valuer. It's a bit of a hierarchy system, and the corporate agencies are well known for it. They sort of move people on. So you start as a trainee negotiator, and all you'll do is answer the phones and show people houses, and then you will then eventually be allowed to go out and give somebody advice on what the price of their house might be. So that's the way that it's sort of built, but I think it is changing. So we are starting to, and again, we are very good and very strong on company marketing here. We're not particularly great on nurturing individual personalities, mostly out of paranoia. We don't want to build up, a David Mintz so that he becomes bigger than the actual company brand. And so we've had that anxiety, but we're starting to step away from that now and really sort of nurture people's progression. So I think you'll see more better rounded individuals with a fuller skill set, really.
Yeah. Well, I would have thought that just with social media, everyone's building their own personal profile and brand behind the scenes anyway. So it's
happening, isn't it? It's happening anyway.
Yeah, it's happening anyway around you. And so we've got, things over here, which is Rate My Agent, and all those, whether or not it's through Google or the way that you can actually, drill right down, even our portals, realestate.com and domain here, you can really now drill right into the agent performance, days on market, what they're selling and all that. So it's very difficult now for us as agents. You've got to align to one of these, whether or not it's Google, whether or not it's Rate My Agent, whether or not it's the portal. So it's becoming a bit of a mix mash. So some agents look amazing on one portal, but terrible on another because a lot of it's paid service for it now. So, but it's, I guess that's all heading your direction. You can deal with it.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think exactly. Thank you for that. I think, look, that's definitely a trend that I think has started. It will encourage too, because as you said, it's just that people want to deal with people, don't they? And that's ultimately the message.
Hey, Simon, when we started this, it was daylight in the background there for Matty. It's now dark. We should let him go.
It's a max. I'm more getting ready to have a beer. It's 5:30.
Matty, by the way, David, I always deliver on my promises. It's almost 2-1 Aussie dollars to the pound. So there you are. That's easy for us to remember. Matty, you've just reminded me, I can see your cap there, and I was lucky enough to get one of your limited edition ladies pink caps, which you can see I've shamelessly my own brand here. I want to say
Yeah.
just thank you so much for spending that time with us. I know we didn't want to keep you from your beer. That I would never want to be thought of in that.
No, I'm good.
Lovely, great to hear again. It's been really great to see now how well deserved and the growth of your business, and it's gonna. I'm sure you're gonna just go from strength to strength. So, thanks again, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you.
My pleasure, fellas. No problem. Yeah, have a good day.